and welcome to another edition of Active Living. We got a great show for you today. We have Ralph and Mary Painter here, and they just returned from a trip to Cuba. And welcome, Ralph and Mary.
Thank you.
Glad to be here, George.
And we're anxious to hear about traveling to Cuba because it's not a lot of U.S. citizens that have had a chance to travel down there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this trip and how you could justify going down when the government has had in the past shut the place down?
Well, we had thought about this several years ago. It's our understanding you could maybe get there from Canada. But this time we put together a list of 6 places, and I asked Mary if she could pin it down, and she came up with Cuba.
Really?
I did.
So then all we had to do was figure out what company we were going to use to take us there.
Right.
And, so I did an internet search, and I narrowed it down to 2. And the one out of Minneapolis didn't really have a schedule of when the dates were open in October, because we wanted to make sure that the hurricane season was over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the Grand Circle Foundation in Boston had quite an impressive list of dates and also activities. Everything was kind of scripted, so we went with that. In fact, we went to the conference in Boston a couple months before that and went through a tour through the place even to make sure that we really wanted to use those, and we did, so it worked out well.
Well, did you have to go under some kind of a special ruling or under an educational or cultural exchange, or how did that work?
Well, I understand that they have at least 10 different categories, and these tours were set up through the U.S. State Department. So Grand Circle had this particular tour, which was 13 days under an educational visa. And so we had to go through the hoops and stuff like that, and make sure that our passports were all in order, and that we were qualified to have a visa. We weren't a crook or anything like that, And so we finally passed all and jumped through the right hoops, and first thing you know, we ended up in Miami on the 18th of October, and we left for Camagüey the next day.
So, Mary, how did you like the trip?
Oh, I loved it.
Did you?
One thing, though, some of the people that were there, we were a group of 20 people.
Oh, were you? Okay.
And one of the ladies had been there, this was her 3rd trip.
Right.
And the other lady, it was her 2nd trip in the last 5 years. So Americans have been going to Cuba through various groups.
Okay. So a lot of them, I know some people that have gone through Canada to get there. But the United States has, in the past has kind of shut things down.
Well, they said that there were numerous trips that had gone there, that there were many, many places that you could contact and go through a program.
Okay.
And which really surprised us. And the number of buses that we saw with travelers from other places, amazing. We couldn't believe it. There were just very, very many travelers there.
We even saw one group, George, that were cyclists. And they had their cycles, and they'd unload the cycles from the bus, cycle around, and put them back in the bus and go back to their hotel at night.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
It was. Yeah, they had a good time.
So you flew down, I assume, out of, I don't know, where do you fly out? Metro, or do you fly out of?
Miami.
Miami.
We met in
Miami.
Miami.
Okay. We had to spend the night at the Sheraton there, and then we had a meeting the next day where we had 20 people. We were given the books about some Spanish terms, and we were well versed on what to say, what not to say. And basically, we just treated people like we do here.
Great.
And everybody was very nice to us, very friendly.
Right.
And we didn't even see a prison. We didn't see a jail, and we never saw any military people.
Really?
It was just like going downtown Lake Orion, and traveling around. It was very nice. Only it was the people were quite a bit lower income,
Right.
The average.
Well, most of those islands down there, the income level is pretty low.
Yeah. Well, the average income supposedly is like $25 a month.
Wow.
Now and. We went to the King Ranch, and where the foreman of the ranch made $200 a month. So
he's a big-time earner.
Big-time earner.
Well, you can see that the U.S., if there is any interest in locating some factories down there, you could probably do better there than you could in China, except they're liable to be nationalized.
Yeah, right.
Which is what happened to over 100 before.
Right. I remember back in the 60s when they were nationalizing the oil companies and a lot of the business that had been down there.
Absolutely.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about some of the places you visited?
Well, we started out in Camagüey, and we visited a high school. We visited some other places first, you know, downtown squares, art exhibits, pottery, things like that. But for us, I think two of the most important areas were the high school, which was for teens, obviously, but they started on the morning doing a regular high school routine, and the afternoon was all music.
Really?
And in fact, I'm doing a video for them. They've never had a video made. None of the people that are in that school have seen themselves.
Oh, is that right?
On the big screen, you know. And so I'm doing a video for them. The principal, I talked to her, and she
fantastic.
said it would really be. But it was really good because we were able to talk to the people as kind of interactive discussions.
Right.
And find out they liked jazz, and we were able to watch a little combo play. We had a sax and a trumpet and a bass and a piano and a singer. So that was really good. The other thing that we saw in the same area was a group of
Flamingo dancing.
Flamenco.
Oh, flamenco
flamenco dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they had two women and a guy, and they had a band, and they did a real good job. No,
high
this
school
was
level.
this was a professional group
Okay.
in Camagüey, and it was one of the few in the whole country that did this type of dancing.
Flamingo dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So it was, but then we saw some really good art in downtown Camagüey. There's some nice artwork where they're made out of bronze, and they represent actual people in there that kind of sat for those. Then we went to several art studios and pottery studios, and one of the places they even allowed one of the women that was with us to make her own little artwork.
Really?
Which didn't look really that good after in the end result, but she was happy that she was able to do that.
Well, Mary, you probably got into the art part, right?
Well,
Or are you an
I got
artist?
to smush the clay.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah, and get it warmed up so that the lady could come and make her
Really?
little dish out of it. Everything was really interactive. They
Mm-hmm.
tried to include us in everything that they had done.
So did you get up and sing too?
Oh gosh, no. I would have been singing off key also. So the one thing about the schools, though, that I really found interesting, the three different, the elementary, the middle school, and then the higher education part, the country provides uniforms for these students, so you know
Okay.
which school they are attending because
Okay.
they're all
By the color,
colorized.
yeah.
And I found that very interesting.
Really?
And the schooling is free.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing that they do provide for the students, and so that basically every child gets an education there.
Now, do they specialize like a lot of the countries in Europe, for example? By the time they get to high school, they
Well-
know what they're going to be in life,
And absolutely, when he was talking about the musical school,
right?
a large, very, very large percentage of the people that go through the school there, they become musicians in orchestras and combos and
Fantastic.
bands, and
Yeah.
so it's basically a training area for them to go into an art that they want to go into and that they're very good at, and they're very well trained.
They have some very good musicians there. I have some.
Absolutely.
I have some friends that live in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
And they travel to Cuba every year just to play with the Cuban musicians.
Well, we went to
then-
one venue where they kind of described it as something like in New Orleans, where the musicians gather in
Oh,
different
yeah.
places to play. And we went there, and oh my goodness, they had a wonderful singer, the band members just continually would get up and somebody else would take
Yeah,
their place and
like a
they
jam
would play.
session where everybody
it was
kinda-
really fun, and then of course it was interactive because as they would be traveling around where we were sitting, come join us. I ended up as the person behind the leader in a Congo line that went throughout. I had a good time.
Sounds like you had a great time.
It was fun. It
Oh,
was.
that's
I mean,
great.
and that's what they wanted us to do. They wanted us
Yeah.
to interact with the people. Every place we went,
Mm-hmm.
we either would talk to them and find out personal things about them
Right.
and their drives and everything, or else with the music,
Yeah.
go with that.
Did they teach English in the schools much, or was it pretty much Spanish? Or
We really didn't get into that, George, but I don't
Yeah.
believe that they did.
okay,
But I do say they have free high schools, free college. If you want to be a doctor or whatever, you test for it, and if you do okay, then after you get through with that, then I guess you visit some other countries for a while before
Okay.
you come back to Cuba and engage people with the free medical care that they're providing there.
well, my understanding is that they have pretty darn good medical training there. As a matter of fact,
Thank
they're-
goodness
yeah.
we never needed it.
Yeah, right,
Well,
right.
apparently, if you look at some of the statistics, apparently the infant mortality rates are one of the lower rates. In fact, I believe they're lower than the United States.
Really?
So they, they don't have to worry about paying for it. You know?
Right,
So
right.
they seek it whenever they need it. You
Yeah.
know, and so it works very well with them. Which brings up another area, though. There's very few areas in Cuba where people could be entrepreneurs, to start a business and that
Really?
kind of thing. But they do have places where you can open up a kind of a market.
Okay.
So they do allow people to lease land. The government owns all the land. You
Right.
can lease it, that kind of stuff. And you can grow some vegetables, that kind of stuff, and you can open up your own stand, or you can open up a restaurant with a license.
Right, right.
And you can also, if you happen to own a house, you can rent a room out.
Oh, Okay.
Now, it doesn't say sometimes the government gets a cut
Okay.
from all these.
Well,
It
they do
wasn't
here
determined.
too.
Yeah, I guess they do.
It's called taxes. here.
Yeah, they do, ultimately.
I noticed you got some items here on the table. You got some. You didn't bring a couple of shot glasses along with you, Ralph, did you?
No,
Little
you
Cuban
know,
rum?
it is Cuban rum. Now,
supposed to be a good
the
one.
strange thing is, if you look at the address of that where it was actually used to be a Ronrico rum.
Okay.
And I think I'm not sure whether they after they nationalized a lot of these business, because I think Ronrico moved to Puerto Rico.
Right.
But the company now, it's all of these industries are owned by the government.
Right.
So, but we did have their rum just about every day. So whether you wanted to, you could have a mojito without rum.
Okay.
That's what I
she did,
had.
yeah.
But I don't like rum.
Yeah. Now we went to a cigar factory, and we found that the cigar people usually make about 100 cigars a day, the good ones. These are Romeo and Juliet. These are fairly good cigars for the price range. These were about $6 a piece.
Wow.
For these. And then we had, this is what a Cuban cigar actually looks. They say that what happens is when you buy a cigar, you should look for filler. If
Okay.
there's filler in it, you don't want it. You want to have the leaves wrapped around.
Okay.
And even in the factory, when they have, the last thing they do was put that in a machine that checks to see how the airflow comes through.
Really?
And if the airflow isn't good, they give it to the employees or throw it away.
Wow.
So they've got pretty good quality standards for their. Then we have a little bit of artwork that that we bought, and they really have some well-known artists. A lot of them do shows in the United States.
They do, which was surprising to me.
This was
Right.
from a professional baseball player. His name was Roberto Risk, and he played in the 60s and 70s. He managed teams, and he's in the Cuban Hall of Fame. But he also played in maybe some pickup games with Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays and that
Oh,
kind
wow.
of stuff back in those days. So he was quite a character, you know, and he was proud of himself.
Did you
And
get to
But
meet
we,
him?
yes, we did.
We
Oh, you
did.
did?
In
Okay.
fact, yeah, there's a picture somewhere I had.
Great.
He took.
You do?
I did not bring it because it's a goofy-looking picture, but
And he autographed the baseball here.
Oh yeah, here
for
we
us.
go.
he
very
was
cool.
he was at one of the schools where they trained people who were interested in playing baseball.
Wow.
And so we were at the field, and we could see all of the things that they would do, throwing,
Right.
hitting. I mean, it was all
Right.
going on before our very eyes. And this was in the afternoon, which of course they have the studies in the morning, and then
And
they
they-
practice the baseball.
And he
in the
allowed some of
afternoon.
our group to try to hit the ball.
Try to hit the ball. That's the.
Some of them did, most of them didn't. I didn't do it myself. I took pictures of those
Right.
that did.
It's myself and my career.
Mi nombre es Rigoberto Rosique.
Rigoberto Rosique, and Rosique is spelled like this.
Upside down.
Número.
Yeah, thank you.
¿Qué número tú jugabas?
Yo jugaba
Mismo número de-
el número de Mickey Mantle.
Ah!
7. En la misma posición, center field.
And center field. Same position of Mickey
Mis
Mantle.
tres jugadores, Mickey Mantle, Willie May y Griffin. Griffin, que llegó a jugar con su papá. Griffin, que llegó a jugar con su papá en el Cincinnati. Es decir, Griffin Jr. le dicen. Bueno, le decía, le estaba diciendo mi nombre, Rigoberto Rosique, Gloria del Deporte Cubano. Para hacer gloria solamente no se miden los resultados deportivos, sino también hay que ser un ejemplo.
To be in a Hall of Fame in Cuba is very important because you are an example for the baseball players and also very good results.
Empecé a jugar muy pequeño a los 5 años.
He started playing baseball when he was 5 years old.
Empecé a superar distintas categorías por la edad.
And then he started growing up and kept playing different categories.
Llegué a representar a mi provincia Matanzas en 14 temporadas.
He represented the team of Matanzas for 14 seasons. Aquí ya empezaste profesional.
10 años en el equipo Cuba.
Then he spent 10 years in the, representing Cuba as a team.
Es decir que representando a mi provincia llegué con 17 años ya, a nivel de alto rendimiento.
Professional level when he was 17 years old.
Es decir que llegué bastante joven.
So very young.
Y al equipo Cuba llegué a los 20 años.
And he was in the Cuba team, he was just 20 years old.
Participé en 5 series mundiales.
He was he played baseball representing Cuba in 5 World Series.
Un panamericano.
A Pan American game.
Un centroamericano.
One Central American game.
Un centro del Caribe.
Caribbean games.
Una serie del Caribe.
Caribbean Series is called.
Fui 3 veces champion bate.
He was champion bat.
2 en competencia nacional representando a mi provincia. 2 en competencia nacional representando a mi provincia y 1 en competencia internacional.
2 in the National Cuban League and 1 in the International Series.
Tell us about your next adventure.
Well, the thing is with Cuba that they have some people that are really famous. Castro hadn't been on that list, or all because they weren't dead. To them, the people that are dead are the famous ones, and so Che Guevara was the one who some people in the United States say he's the most hated person that maybe ever lived.
Right.
Others in Cuba think he was a hero. And we don't really know what was true. Mary's reading a book about him right now, but apparently he was actually a licensed physician and used to travel around on a motorcycle administering health care to people, you know,
really?
in his younger days.
Yeah.
There's a book, Motorcycle Diary, somebody had told me about that I had to read, and which I will try to get a hold of, which tells about his adventures before he got active.
So he was kind of a local hero before he became
well,
active.
he was
He wasn't just
interesting
in
person.
Cuba. He was from South America, from Brazil, and that's where he got his medical training and that kind of stuff. And he met Castro. They were in prison in Mexico, you know, from some of the other stuff that Castro had tried to do when Batista was in power. And he's got a amazing mausoleum in Santa Ana. But before that, you see a monument to how they overtook Batista. And basically, Batista sent a train of 1,000 soldiers over to this town to try to put these people out of business. But meanwhile, Che Guevara was quite a strategist. So he firebombed the train on the way out there, and so in fact, 600 people left. So by the time they got to this town, they only had 400 left, and he had people that were up on hills, and looked like he had maybe 1,000 people there, and they scared the troops off. And so Batista left town with $300 million and never came back. So after that time, then that was 1959, and then Castro took over then. And then they went through the other things, which I don't want to get into, with the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, which would take a long time to go into. But there's a lot of different perspectives on this. What the U.S. has got one position on this, but they don't bother to get into the Bay of Pigs thing and how the Oregon CIA did this or that. And so the one thing that we did notice, though, is that the Cuban people, for the most part, are relatively happy. You know, they have a lot of music, they get paid. They don't use the kind of tool, like instead of using a weed whacker to trim some weeds, they might use a pair of scissors to do that. Well, they don't care.
But everybody has a job.
Everybody
does. And
they're happy. The general consensus is, I don't have a lot, but I'm happy with what I have. And so they're happy to have something. And we just say, oh, they're repressed. And so, and the people that we did talk with, I mean, we would see people, we'd go and have a drink in a bar, or we would go to a plaza, and just see people there, and they just really seem to be genuinely happy. We didn't see anybody yelling at anybody. We didn't. I mean, it was just calm.
Yeah.
And which that probably helps with their health problems too.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know, there's a couple things that we wanted to get into a little bit. You know, they apparently it was terrible when they brought a lot of the black people over from Nigeria, and they had took 2.5 months for them to arrive in Cuba,
Right.
and they had to sit naked in this boat for 2.5 months. A lot of them died. But in any event, a lot of them, when they came over to Cuba, they didn't have anything but their religion.
Right.
So these days, you can go into a place, and there's one in the video that shows a place where this woman operates a place, and people can come in there and try to contact their dead relatives or people.
Oh,
And,
really?
And yeah, and they go through the. The other thing that is really interesting, though, is their interest in old cars.
Ah.
And I got some of the pictures in the video, and you can see this one here, this '56 Ford convertible.
Yeah.
It's just one of many that they have there. That in fact, the last night we were there, we went to a restaurant, and at the end of the presentation and the food, and we had some pretty good food. We had fillets and
Really?
lobster and so. But our guide says, we got a special for you. We got a surprise. So we go outside, and they have 5 cars, 5 convertibles with their tops down. And we left that restaurant and drove all the way back to our hotel along Havana Bay, yelling and screaming and singing. And and some of this is on the video.
Is this
You'll
after
see.
the rum?
This is
Ralph?
after the mojitos and the other adventures that we had there.
It was like cruising Woodward.
So cruising
Yeah, it was like
in
cruising
Havana.
in a 1956 Ford convertible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
They even have, in this other place here in Remedios, they have a drivers club. And this club, they've got all owned cars.
Right.
And we ended up going for a ride in those cars also. I went with a '52 Chevy in that case, and the guy that had it could not get any parts for the engine. So what did he do? He used a Toyota diesel for a '52 Chevy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
And he was very proud of the car.
he
you know.
fitted the diesel engine in.
He did. I don't know how it got in there because it looked pretty full, but he did it.
One of the
Wow.
things
So-
I wanted to add on to what he had said, basically the people that live in Cuba came from Spain and they came from Africa.
Okay.
And they seem to get along very well.
No
they don't have
problems
any,
with-
No,
no
not at
race
all.
problems. There's absolutely no problem there.
Now, one of the
That's
last
great.
And
things
that
that
was, yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
that we had in the hotel, we had a cappella choir that sang for us for about an hour. And it was about half of Africans and half regular.
Well, they're all Cubans, though.
But still, I mean, they
Right.
they did very well singing in different leads and so on. And
Hello? Hello. We are the Ensemble Vocal Luna Choir, the only professional female choir in our country since 2002. Welcome to Tanganana Salon. Es un placer tener esta oportunidad de compartir hoy con ustedes.
It is a pleasure for them to receive you in this room.
Queremos que este momento no sea un mini concierto de Luna, sino es un momento de conocernos, de intercambiar, preguntar lo que deseen.
Besides being the moment for showing part of the repertoire, they would like to interchange and get to know in a little bit and answer questions.
Sí,
anything.
siéntense libres de preguntar lo que deseen, en familia.
Feel free, like in a family, feel free to enjoy the choir and ask any questions or things you would like to know.
Nuestra primera pieza es un canto de Senegal, canto de agradecimiento.
Our first piece is saying thank you to Mother Nature, and it's a Senegal piece.
Es un canto de agradecimiento a la buena cosecha, al buen fruto, y así agradecemos también de esta manera que estén aquí con nosotros.
You sing that in Senegal when you are desiring a good crop and a good harvest for the future, and it's also saying thank you to you for coming this afternoon.
Vamos a cantar un poco de todos los géneros que podemos abordar.
So they'll be covering different genres, different styles.
Específicamente de música de...
And that's in the video that people can see.
So that's another music thing that
That's
probably
right.
learned how to do that in high school, right?
Yes, yes,
So-
and they are looking forward to coming to the United States to go on tour.
Well,
If
they
somebody
have,
would
they have
ask
been
them
in
to
the
come,
States
you know, they
before.
would
Have
be
they?
Yes,
very
they
good,
have.
very
They're
happy.
the
Okay.
only women's a cappella group in
In Cuba.
Cuba.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if
that's
you ever
great.
see them advertised any place,
Okay, we'll do that. Now, did you get to any other interesting places while you were there?
Well, downtown Havana was quite interesting because it rained like crazy. While we were down there, we were soaking wet. And we went in to see Hemingway and his,
Okay.
at
Oh,
this
the Hemingway
restaurant,
place, yeah.
as wet as we were in there. But the things that we noticed was that they have a place in Havana called Revolution Square. And this is where a lot of times you've seen the gatherings where Castro would lecture people for 3 or 4 hours and that
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of stuff. As you know, he's gone now, and so they're not going to do that anymore. But just down, in fact, right on the fringe of that is where the government has been operating now for forever, operating on buildings. But they have a beautiful capitol that looks just like our capitol in Washington that's being renovated.
Okay.
And they're going to have elections in January, not January, but in 2018.
Real elections now, right?
Well, now
That's what they
nobody
say.
knows. They
That's what they're
claim that
saying.
what they're going to do is elect a president and Congress,
Really?
and it also wasn't explained to us how they govern, like the cities that we went to and the provinces. There must be people doing it, but
Sure.
how they got there, they probably were appointed, if they are there, by the army.
Well, we don't know.
Be our guess.
Right.
So that's a lot of things, you know. you have to ask the guide, you know, and he'll give you the answers, but he won't dwell on it too long, so
Right.
you don't really know if
dig it
is
out
this,
of 'em.
you know, like he told us that Monte Cristo cigars sold for $200 a piece, and a box of 10 were $2,000. Now,
Wow.
I don't know if that was true or not, but I certainly wouldn't be paying $200 a piece for a cigar.
But
And
if
I
you're
wouldn't recommend
somebody
you.
that had, you know, a lot of wealth, you might want to
Well,
do that.
you know, we've heard
Might
how
be a status
they
symbol.
do that. In fact, this cigar, this is a box which one of the larger cigars that fit into, and we heard that these things sell for like $1,500 a piece, and those are the ones that Castro smoked.
Right.
And they're the one. What they do is for the big spenders at some of the casinos, they get that in there and they go in and they give them the fine Cuban cigars,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
for their losing a fortune that they do in the whatever it is, blackjack game or whatever
Yeah.
they're doing there.
So overall, it was a great trip, from what I'm gathering from your conversation.
You know, when we got there and we met our guide, he met us at the airport and he was with us the whole 13 days we were there. And he had said, you can ask me anything. We can talk about the government, we can talk about Castro, we can
Right.
talk about, you name it. You ask us, we'll tell you. And they were very open with us
Right.
on everything that we asked about. So it was, I like that aspect of it, that he was willing to tell us. Now, of course, you know, it might not be true. I believe everything I hear, so I don't know. But he was, I mean, and we did ask about Castro. We did ask about a lot of different people. One of the things that he was talking about when going to Hemingway's house, there, a small group of us from our larger group wanted to go. And we were at the fort, and our guide found two old cars for us to take, and we poured into one, and then the other group went into the one behind us. And we had this car, honest to God, it was so funny because when he turned on the motor and he put it in gear, I thought we were going to go airborne. I mean, it was popping and smoking and backfiring. And the other the other car followed us, and at one point, halfway there, and it was about a 45 minute trip from where we were, they went off on a different road, and I thought, oh, we'll never see these people again, because we didn't think that that driver knew where he was going. And we laughed as we had gone out there, because we were just practically dying in the car because of the fumes that were coming in from the floor. And we had the windows open, but it was coming in through the windows instead of the good air, you know, was going out the windows.
Right.
And when we got to the home, we were talking to the people and laughing. I said, I thought we'd never see you again. And they said they were so happy when their driver went straight, because they said they were getting all the fumes from the back, and they just knew that they didn't think they would be alive when they got out there. They were so strong. But that was the fun of driving in some of these cars. I mean, bless their hearts. They didn't all look like this blue convertible here.
Yeah, one thing
Some
that
of them were
we
really
did,
bad.
George, that in Cuba, they don't have a lot of money, but they try to really do a lot to help people, give them careers and move them along. And we went to an alley when there's a very famous place there, and this alley, they train, you have to walk up 90 steps,
90 steps
to go to the top. On the very top, they got a school for barbers, beauticians, and then bartenders even.
No, that was a business. The school was across the street. For the, well, we disagree
I'm
on
not
this.
gonna negotiate
No,
that.
don't negotiate that.
Okay, was
but
it
it was
within
the
100
idea.
yards of
It was
the,
it was the idea that
The point, and so they have like classes like 15 people in a class,
Okay.
and they train them, and how long? And they figured that it's worth thousands of dollars to go
a
to
one-year,
this.
2-year program, free,
Yeah.
because they want to have the youth realize that they can have a career.
Sure.
You're going to have to, at some point, because I think the people there, they really believe that communism is going to be gone, because they don't, it's not
Well, pure
working.
communism, they said they tried, they had 10 years worth of it, it didn't work.
It's not
They
working.
scrapped it because some people decided they weren't going to work anymore, and the others, the doctors didn't think they were making enough
Well, the other-
money,
yeah.
so
Right,
it just went by the boards.
Yeah,
So they're moving a little bit more toward capitalism as time goes on.
They are, and the thing that they're concerned, they don't want to move too quickly because they're afraid, like before when Batista was in power, where the mafia was involved, and they took all the land. They built big hotels, and they would like to have the people have access to the land, be able to start their own businesses, and kind of ease into a policy where the government, right now it's about 60% government and about 40% private enterprise.
Okay.
So they'd like to maybe turn that around before too long.
Right.
But right now, the tourism is the biggest one where the people make the money, and the reason that they make the money is on tips. So like in our case, we figured that our guide for our 20 people pocketed about $2,500.
Oh, that's pretty
Plus,
good pay
the
for
bus
down there.
The bus driver made money, and every
That's
time we stayed in a hotel, they encouraged us to leave the money for the ladies that made up the rooms and that kind of stuff.
That's
so,
a year's worth of pay for him, probably.
Well, you know, here he
Compared
is. I don't know how old he was. He's probably
33. He was
33. He lived in an apartment house, a nice place, with his mother and his wife and son.
Okay.
So he didn't have very many expenses, you know, and so I don't know what, if you split that $2,500 up between his mother and his son and his wife, and I don't know.
But his wife wants to come to the United States. And he said, no, he said, I feel that this country is going to open up. And I think that this is where we need to be at this time.
Well, we've had a
And
move
that's a lot
in
of
that
people.
direction, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And who knows if it's going to continue, right?
Who knows? Who knows?
And
But
they're
he's
a little bit worried
optimistic.
about that because they're going to have the elections in 2018, and they think that maybe a relative of Fidel, his son, possibly might, even though it doesn't appear that way, may end up with the premier. And if he does, would it be more of the same or not?
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Interesting. So before we wrap up, do you have any final, nuggets of information for us? Those of us who would like to go to Cuba?
Well, if you go there, you got to visit the King Ranch.
Okay.
There's a big one in Texas, and they own this one here, but the government took it also. But you can go out to the King Ranch, and you can see elementary school, and you can see cowboys roping steers, and you can ride. It's just an amazing place.
Really?
This is Mr. Vicente. Hola, Vicente.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Qué bueno que todos hablan español. Good afternoon. You're welcome. Take pictures, and I wanted to see this. Is here any electric engineer? Or any electrician?
Yes, right here.
Over here, my friend. I will show you something that.
We went to just about a place like that every day. So if you want to go see stuff you've never seen before, have some good food, have some nice Cuban rum, and Havana cigars if you want to take that route.
Right.
That's the place to go. And actually, this bottle, $6.
Really?
And I guarantee you it costs more
Hope
than
it's
that.
good.
Well, I do too.
We'll find out soon, right?
We'll find out. He
right
will.
after we
He
finish
will.
the program,
Yeah.
Ralph, we're going to break that baby open, aren't we?
Why not? Why not?
We have to drive home.
Well, I really want to thank you both for attending
you.
today and telling us a little bit about this trip to Cuba. It sounds like it was fantastic for both of you.
Well, I appreciated the arts, a lot of
Right.
the music and the schools and
Right.
dancing and singing, and
Yeah.
it was an eye opener also to talk to the people, and like to say, we don't have much, but we're happy with what we have,
Great.
and wonderful attitude, positive attitude,
Yeah.
and they're looking to the future.
Ralph, any final?
Well, you hear all these bad things that people are saying about Cuba. We didn't see they had any restrictions on travel. You could go into a bar and get a beer. You could take a carriage ride. You could go anywhere you wanted to. It looks like it's a nice place to visit. The weather's good. I guess it's a little bit hot in the summertime, people say, you know.
And the pricing is good, I assume, for vacation?
As I understand it, you can rent a room at these people that have rooms to rent, a kind of bed and breakfast for like $25 a night.
Wow.
And they would include some food.
That's fantastic.
So, now the hotels we stayed at were about probably 200.
Okay.
But even that, considering where we were staying, was,
not bad.
And it's not the, the Hilton, but it's clean and the people are nice. That's the good part of it.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on Active Living. I look forward to seeing you again and talking a little bit more about this later. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, George.